Welcome, one and all, to the latest episode of Signals from Mars. I'm your host, Victor, and joining me today are Matt Hartnett and Tanner Poppin from the documentary Lifers. How are you guys doing?
Doing great, Victor. Thanks for having us on, man. Really appreciate it, dude.
Doing awesome, man. How you doing?
Good, good. I'm honored to have you guys on. Matt, this is, I think, your second or third time on.
I think third
And
time on, yeah.
yeah, Tanner, this is your first, so I appreciate you guys jumping on here to talk about the movie, um, the documentary. I was mentioning this to Tanner off air. I wanted to make sure that I could sit down and watch this in one sitting. I knew beforehand how long the movie was going to be, so it took me a while to see it, but not because I didn't want to see it. It's just that I wanted to carve out time just to watch the whole thing in one sitting and absorb it all in one sitting. Um, the movie is Lifers. The documentary is Lifers. I keep saying movie. I want to say film. I want to say documentary. Does movie bother you? I mean, there are some people that
No. Movie, film, like you said, documentary, it's all kind of rock doc, whatever. It's all same. It's all relevant, right? I mean, yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. What was the catalyst for you guys to start working on Lifers?
Well, just an idea came to me a couple of years ago. Just doing a lot of obviously doing the podcast myself and talking to a lot of these artists. A lot of them, obviously, as you did too, Victor. A lot of these artists are middle-aged guys, right? A lot of them too might not have had much, I would say commercial or mainstream success. Maybe they've had some, been on some good labels and had to, put out a couple of records on some of those labels, good independent labels, but they never really hit it big to where they could do this full time and make a living off it. And so I just thought to myself, I wonder how these guys do it. I mean, how do they balance it around their work, their family, and what really keeps them driven and motivated to go out there and to keep putting out records, to keep touring. And even if they're playing in front of you on a Wednesday night in front of 20, 30 people, traveling that far, and, obviously not making really any money off it. I mean, they come back, maybe they break even or they make a little bit, but really just to kind of delve into the question we asked all of them is, why do you still do it? As it's in the film at the end there. And that's what we want to really get the answer to. Why do you still do it? What is, what drives you, motivates you, and how do you balance it around basically the rest of your life? And so that kind of came to my mind. I was talking to Tanner about it one day. I said, yeah, I got this really idea of a film I think I want to do. And when he heard the idea, he was like, hey man, I'm on board. Let's do it. And so we decided to kind of, just put together five musicians, artists that we thought were, had some pretty interesting careers and have had some success, maybe not, like I said, mainstream or commercial success, but did some things and are out there still doing it. And just like the movie says, they're lifers, right? It's something that they just can't stop doing. And just kind of wanted to, give just people a sort of a glimpse or a synopsis of what these guys do to make all that happen.
Okay.
Yeah, and with my background, I've done a couple films, so my main focus was kind of just to like capture that vision that Matt particularly came up with. So I thought it was a cool idea, and like how I was gonna play my part was just do the best job of capturing it and giving them the materials to put a film together, because it's not really easy to put a film together when you don't have the pieces in place to do that. So
Mm.
I thought it was a great idea, and it's here we are today talking about it. So it's been awesome.
Cool. And were there other ideas you were kicking around, or was it immediately Lifers? This is what, because I know you're a creative person with podcasting. There's so many ideas being thrown around and
Mhm.
different things that you have to sort through and figure out exactly in what direction you want to go in. So, were there other things you were contemplating, or was it this right off the bat?
Yeah, this was kind of it off the bat. I mean, obviously, the way the film came out, there were some things that maybe were in it that I didn't think of maybe at the time until we did the filming. And of course, there were some things we wanted to get, we were thinking of getting that we didn't maybe get, maybe because, a lot of it too, I mean, obviously, since this is our first film together doing this, we didn't have anything to show some of these guys, right? We
Right.
couldn't like a reference. To say like, look, it's going to kind of be like alone like this. So I think a lot of them didn't really like know what we wanted to do, and we kind of explained it to them, but it was also like, okay, it's one of those things where it's hard to really understand what our vision was until it's out.
Mhm.
So that was one of the things too. Is sure we wanted to obviously get and the guys in the film will tell you that, I was asking them for some stuff. Tanner was asking them for some stuff. And, I think either they didn't feel comfortable giving it to us because of not having any background in this yet, or maybe there's just certain personal things they didn't want to put out there, and which we totally understand. So yeah, there is a couple of things in the film that, yes, that weren't planned, that just kind of came up as we were filming, that were like, oh, you know what, we could put this in there and so forth. But in terms of the overall general idea, that this was really the main idea. But obviously, yeah, everything in the film, it wasn't like that's what we wanted to get originally. It just kind of came up, and so we said, hey, this is a good piece that we can include in it. Yeah.
I think the biggest obstacle was trying to find a name to fit the movie.
Yeah, that was totally. Mhm.
Were there other names you guys were throwing around?
Yeah, but nothing really serious. There was a name or two I threw to Tanner. I said, we had like a temporary name in the beginning, and after thinking about it for a day or so, it's like, nah, we could do better than that. You know what I mean? We could think of something better. So Lifers just kind of, I don't know how exactly it came to me. And I remember I ran it by Tanner. I said, what do you think of Lifers? He was like, hey, perfect, man. That actually fits with everything we're trying to do. And so, and everyone else was happy with the name too. But yeah, obviously the name is always kind of always probably one of the most challenging things to do, right? Since it's your branding and you want to make sure you nail it and don't come up with something kind of silly or stupid or something that doesn't stick. So we thought just one word, Lifers, and it fit really kind of what it was about. These guys are lifers, right? They're doing this for life, and there's no stopping them. So we thought it was a pretty ideal and fitting name for it. Yeah.
Okay. And you kind of alluded to this a moment ago. What was something that an artist gave you that you weren't expecting? And what was
Mhm.
something that maybe you thought they were going to give you and they didn't give you?
Well, that one we can answer pretty easily. One of the things we wanted to get in the beginning was obviously, and we completely understand why it didn't happen. Again, we're new at this, and was we were obviously hoping to get at least a cameo appearance by Bill Church himself.
Okay.
And obviously, we asked Trevor at first; he seemed open to it, and then I think the more we went to Fresno, we asked about it, and I think he had been sick for a little bit, so he's like, yeah, you know what, my dad's not really feeling good. Maybe it's not like the best time to do it. So we had to go back to Fresno and do some more filming. And I guess the same thing, he wasn't really feeling too good. So I think in the end, maybe, and he'd have to answer himself, but I think a lot of it was like, who are these guys? They haven't done any films yet. He knows we've interviewed obviously Trevor, both of us, multiple times for our podcast. But again, it's the music business, right? I mean, and he's very protective of his dad's legacy, and very understandably so. And so and he had just put out a book too. Bill Church, Martin Popoff did a book on Bill, and really good book too. I suggest everyone out there, if you saw what you liked with Bill in the movie and his past, really great book that Trevor did with Martin Popoff to put that out. And so I think it's just one of those, like, it's a music business, right? Everyone's trying to get their hands in the cookie jar, and it's a very shady and not trustworthy business. So I don't think we had built up yet that relationship with him where it was like, okay, yeah, here's my dad and here's whatever. He's very protective. So we totally understood why at the end he didn't really, maybe he kind of backed out of doing that. In terms of what was in the film that we didn't expect to be in there, I guess there's a few things. I guess one of the things that sticks out to me was when we started and we had originally got Eric into the film. Um, Shortly after we agreed to do it, I noticed he had put out there that he was actually going to go do a reunion show with the band Overloaded, one of his bands in Detroit that he was in. And so when I found out about that, I said, hey, this would be a great thing. Me and Tanner talked. We both decided, yeah, this is a good thing we can include in the film. So we had asked him, obviously while he was there, to get us some footage and everything, and to get that portion. And I thought that piece was really good, to kind of kind of come full circle with his Detroit roots and how they did this reunion. I think since then they did another show as well. I think not about a month or two ago they did a show back there again.
Right.
So that was something that in the original planning wasn't in, but once I saw he was doing it, I said we got to take advantage of this. And so me and Tanner, both hit him up and said, hey, let's get this in there. So we thought that was something that wasn't planned. That eventually made it in there.
Well, and we had pretty much given like a list to all these guys, and Eric literally checked off every single like item on that list that we sent out. So that was really like refreshing for me. Just it made in my particular opinion, his parts there was more to it with his parts, just because we got a lot out of Eric per se. Now again, if I had done a few films beforehand, so this wasn't my first, but it was our first just as a collective. So I completely understand with Matt as to maybe some people were hesitant to give us some things that could have made the film even better than what I'm particularly proud of it. I know Matt is as well, and it could have definitely made the film that much better, that much cooler. But I think Eric was the biggest surprise for me personally.
Yeah, Eric got us everything plus times 10 that we asked him to get. He was great to work with and really easy in terms of really, but at the same time, we've had I know you know Eric, I know Victor, I know he's been on this show. And we've all had a relationship with him for some time. So there was that sort of relationship already built where he trusted us, and he knew we were going to do well by him and everything. And so as we know, it's all about the relationships in this field. And so I think that's why we were able to get more from him than some of the others, just because was already that relationship built. But in the end, we were grateful to all of them for getting us what they did get. Of course, we wanted more and more, and we just want. But I'm just grateful in general that they all agreed to do it, and they got us what they did, so that the film came out the way it did.
Yeah, Eric's funny like that. You send something his way saying, "Hey, I'm looking to talk about this topic. Do you want to chime in, or you want to?" I'll ask. Well, we're voting on this on the show. Do you want to? I don't know if I can, say anything about that, or I don't know if I really have an opinion. And like 5 minutes later, okay, well, that you made me think about it. Here,
Yeah,
he's great like that.
Yeah, he is. No, he's always been easy to work with, and always very open and forthcoming with everything.
And he's quick. He got it to us
very quick,
like super quick.
Very real professional, man. He really is the consummate pro. He really is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Outside of Bill, is there anyone else that you guys approached that you wanted to include that ended up not wanting to be part of the movie?
Yeah, well, obviously the two, the two biggest names in the film obviously were Trevor and Ruben. Ruben obviously being a part of the original Fu Manchu lineup on those original albums that were huge. Same with Nebula. So of course, I wanted to, dig a little into, I tried to get somebody from one of the who's in both of those bands, actually, obviously. But I think it's the same kind of thing. I think a lot of it was most of the guys, we explained to them what the idea was about, but obviously, like I said, we had nothing to reference it and say, hey, it's going to kind of be like this. And because we didn't have already, like I said, too much. I mean, like I said, Tanner said he has a couple of, films, but, in terms of us working together and just something out there that a lot of people know about, we didn't have anything. So I think it was, well, what's this going to be? If I'm going to go reach out and ask this guy to be in it, I mean, first of all, as we know, a lot of times when people come up with these ideas, they start filming, they put out trailers, these films don't get finished.
Right.
And so I think that was the other thing, was just like, well, is this going to even go through? Right. I mean, because we're just as I say, two clowns with a camera, going and filming these guys. So they're just like, they don't know how professional it's going to look, because we just got a camera. We're asking them, we're interviewing, we're doing things. So they just didn't really, we've got, most of them had come out and said, this was much better than they thought it was going to be. And so I think that kind of gives us an idea, is okay, they just didn't know. And they were like, they're just two dudes. It's not like a big, production thing here. So I think they were just hesitant to get anybody else involved and reach out, and then this thing either not happening or it not really being that professional, not looking that great. So again, yeah, I mean, we try, I tried to get, an ex-Fu Manchu, Nebula member, but I think because of that, or either, listen, and I don't know what the relationships obviously these guys have with their old bandmates. There might not be, in the case of the guy who was trying to get, he used to be a Nebula. Nebula had two of their bassists die within 1 year.
Mhm.
So it was a real, do you want to really go there and so again, I think just a lot of them were hesitant for that reason. So obviously, like Tanner said, that we definitely had more that we wanted to get, but I think considering we had no background together and had no other product together, I think what they gave us, we're very just grateful they did, and at least we put out a quality film through it. Yeah.
And I also want to add too, I also appreciated all like the secondary players in this. Like I loved the fact that we got Kat from Old Blood. She was like super supportive and like super just like ready to go. Literally got off the stage and did like a 15-minute interview that we absolutely loved to that was included. So like I think it's kind of those little moments for me that really like are my favorites of the film itself.
Yeah, that's it's funny looking at Kat because she usually only has half of her makeup on, but in the interview she's got like a quarter on. So
Yeah.
as soon as I saw her, I'm like, wow, this is fresh from her getting off the stage and
Yeah.
switching half of that off.
Mhm.
And that's cool too because I follow her on social media and follow the band and whatnot. So to put a voice with the image, and it's not the same as hearing her sing, just getting her opinion and her feedback, because obviously she's there and she's living through a lot of these different things. So it's cool to get that type of feedback that also isn't somebody that's going to be bullshitting you either. I think
Mhm.
what you're saying as well is that there's just so much shit that happens with the music industry that of course these guys have a shield up, and they're weary about
Totally.
who to talk to, what to say, who they're going to actually spend their time with. So I mean, it makes sense. Everything you guys are saying makes sense.
Yeah. No, it is. And like I said, we completely understand it. And like I said, the good thing is, and we'll talk maybe a little bit later, but we are going to, be doing a second one of these.
Oh, okay.
And so the good thing is now that we've got this, we've got something we can reference to. I don't think we'll have too much of a problem
Yeah.
in that area going forward. Hopefully. Yeah. Mhm.
And I also think because Matt and I are fellow musicians, so we do understand, the trepidations that musicians would have for, some new quote unquote new people coming in and kind of trying to put a spotlight on their careers and do something nice for the bands and whatnot. Like we understand the trepidations when it comes to that, just being musicians ourselves. So I just want to throw that out there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And why did you guys decide to do a long form documentary as opposed to doing a series? You had the 5 different interviews. You could have focused on one guy for each part, but you guys decided to do the long form instead.
Yeah, we obviously had some discussions on how to go about doing that. I think originally when we started this, there was going to be 4 and not 5. The fourth, originally we had Ruben and Eric locked in from the get-go. Ruben was the first one I'd asked to do it, and when I saw his band The Freaks play up here, and I'd interviewed him before and so forth. But we had another person I was going to approach, at actually, it's kind of funny when we got Kip and Nacho, is actually where we kind of started. We already had the idea, me and Tanner. We went to the SoCal Heavy Jam that's featured in the film, and we had talked previously about doing the film. So when we were down there, I said, "Hey, there's somebody who's going to be playing here that I'm going to approach, and I wanted to ask to be in it." And what happened was when we got down there and we saw how the festivals run, I had known, I'd interviewed and kind of knew a little bit of Kip and Nacho beforehand. But when we saw just how great the festival was, how it was run, these guys, how genuine they are, how just of a community feel that festival is. They bring in food for everybody. I mean, it's just really something you don't see anymore.
Mhm.
And we were just both kind of blown away, and we both just kind of sat there, and I was like, this is, we both just talked about it and said, we should really have these guys part of this, And so the person I was going to ask at the time, I decided, we're going to ask these two. This is,
Mhm.
I think, a better fit for what we wanted to do. And then the last person we got in was Trevor, but so we kind of had them in as sort of as a package kind of thing, because they work together with the festival. Their bands obviously haven't been around as long. They haven't had the history as the other three have.
Mhm.
So we were going to kind of combine them, which we kind of did. But after, doing all the filming, and after, I was editing everything and kind of cutting it up, and we got it down to about the 2 hours and 40 minutes that the film is, I was going to then, maybe cut some more of it. But I said, you know what, like, it was really hard to do that. I wanted to have everyone give their story. And when I went through it all, I said, I don't really see how I could take any of this out without it not, it's all relevant to their story.
Mhm.
So we just decided, in the end, instead of, cutting out of one scene or, using that maybe as bonus footage or, just trimming it down. It's just like, you know what, this is the story. It's a little unconventional. I know it's a little longer, but I wanted to make sure they all had their story in there as full. And so it was definitely a decision we definitely kind of wrestled with a bit, should we shorten it? Should we keep it? But
Mhm.
in the end, we decided let's just keep it as it is. Going forward, yes, I think having the 5 was a bit much. I think 4 with the timing. That's the only complaint we've gotten, obviously, if anything, was just that, it's a little long, which we understand. Yeah, it's not something that, maybe someone can watch within an hour and a half in one setting. When I sent it to you, as I said, it might take multiple settings to finish this up. But some people have said, I watched it right through. It was great. So it's all in the, not, the eye of the beholder, as they say, right? So, but yeah, definitely that was the one thing we had that we wrestled with, was definitely the length. And I think it's because, having 5 might have been a lot to for a lot of people to digest, but in the end, it was just like, you know what, instead of cutting, we wanted everyone to give their story, so we just decided to leave it in there.
Yeah, and Matt and I we really got lucky with this, because the SoCal Heavy Jam that Matt's referring to is, I think, from 2023. And it just so happened that Kip was playing with Formula 400 at the time. Now, we didn't know anything that was going to happen, obviously, the next year. And we had already kind of planned on kind of wrapping it up with the 2024 SoCal Heavy Jam. Now, we didn't know that Kip was going to be retiring from the band. So that kind of threw a whole wrench in and kind of made it even more extra fun to try and come up with an idea of how are we going to put this in the film. So we really got lucky on a few key moments of the film, in my opinion, as well. I don't know if Matt if you wanted to discuss any of that or.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The Kip thing, that was a thing too. I mean, obviously with him leaving, that opened up this, when it first happened, I was like, oh my God, well, what are we going to do now? The movie's called Lifers and Kip's no longer alive, he's retiring. So, but we thought actually that's a good thing to feature, is him, having to leave the band because, of his age and it's the pain. Like I said, he's got shoulder issues. He's got a lot of physical problems. And then just obviously just getting to a point where you go, okay, maybe I guess I am done. So in the end, it was like, actually, you know what? This is actually a good thing. This will give a little twist to the film. And so, I mean, of course, I wish he was still with the band, because, he's good at his instrument, and he's really the guy behind the band that really made, has gotten them to where they are in terms of being out there on social media and promoting the band. He was really the face. He's the guy on social media pumping them. Without him, I mean, not a lot of people would have discovered, Formula 400. So of course we had to then include that part as well. So it did open it up to be a little bit longer because of that as well. And but obviously, yeah, that is the one thing, is the length. That's usually it's done, but usually docs are usually an hour and a half to 2 hours. But we thought, this is a different type of documentary anyway. Why not just let them all have their stories, and we just won't really focus too much on the time itself. So yeah, that's why it's as long as it as it is. We just didn't want to take anything out. We thought everything that was in there, it was relevant and needed to be kind of said. So we just left it in.
Yeah. The other cool thing is that he also does say that he's going to continue to help work with the festival moving forward. So at least in that sense, he still is a lifer in the sense that he's leaving Formula
Yes.
400, but he's still going to be involved with the scene and promoting things as well. So,
Yep. And,
it,
and yeah, and he says in the film too about how they might do like an all-star kind of jam thing, and they
right.
are going to do that, and that's all scheduled for this year's heavy jam. So that is
Oh,
happening.
cool.
Yeah. So exactly, you're right. He's still a lifer, absolutely.
Yeah, and I will be filming that. Maybe we could do some bonus material with it. We never know.
Mhm.
So
How much did the late great Bob Nalbandian's influence play into this documentary?
Well, obviously, well, to be honest with you, when I had the idea and then I approached Tanner to do, for us to do it together, at first, I wasn't sure, in terms of like, this is a big, it's a big undertaking to do a documentary. I was, very blessed, to have, to work with Bob on the Bay Area Godfathers, to do some work right here in the studio with him on that film. So I got to see Bob, obviously in action with the film, and I got to, see him how, pick his brain and how he's putting everything together. And with Bob though was a little different because he basically he had a budget from Cleopatra, and he was able to hire people to help him with these things. Whereas with me and Tanner, this is just we're doing everything.
Mhm.
But in terms of like it really started was, I did a tribute film to Bob, where I had like, Brian Slagle and a bunch of these guys giving a tribute. And so that was sort of my test run to see if I can do a documentary. And once I did that, I thought to myself, yeah, this could totally happen. Like it's definitely feasible and attainable to do about documentary. Because at first, it's like I was watching Bob with all these people he's hiring. And I'm like, man, how does he make all this work? So for us to do it ourselves was definitely more of an undertaking to do. But doing that tribute we did to him, and then just also being around him, picking his brain, just being a friend of his, and just yeah, I mean, obviously he's a big influence. I mean, I think our film is a lot different than Bob's films, which were more historical, obviously, and really documentaries in terms of really documenting like the history of the scenes and so forth in LA, where ours is a little different. But in terms of just getting the confidence and knowing and having just a good base and I guess yeah,
like a good
just to sort of
foundation.
yeah,
Yeah.
foundation is the word. Bob was definitely influential big time for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I just saw that you guys are going to be releasing 50 physical copies
Yes.
of the
Right there.
documentary. Oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there. These are the promo DVDs that we had to send out to distributors and so forth. We had a lot of interest. It's the film's going to be on filmzy.com right now. I mean, we've got it out there. We're hoping obviously it should be on Amazon within the year as well and on Prime Video. But obviously we did a sort of pre-sale thing on a specific site for about a week for people if they wanted to check it out. We did that back in May, and obviously, so we got a little bit of buzz, and people were like, "When's it coming out?" Obviously, all the guys in the film were getting questions, so they're like, "Hey, everybody wants to see this thing." So we thought, I mean, unfortunately, when it's on these streaming sites, there is no release date. It's just
Mhm.
they license it, and when it's up, it's up. So right now, we know it's going to be on filmzy.com. We're just waiting any day for it to be up. So we just decided for the people who really are just chomping at the bit and really don't want to wait, and for the collectors too, obviously, who like to collect and everything, we just decided to some of these. We had about, I forget how many exact, but we had a bunch of these promo DVDs that we were sending out to distributors. So we say, you know what, we'll set a bunch aside. We'll set 50 aside, and they're going pretty fast though. We're surprised at how fast they're going right now.
Cool.
We're almost sold out. Yeah.
Yeah, we're almost sold out of them. So it's going
Cool.
pretty fast, and which is great. We're great to see the interest in it. So we decided, yeah, let's just take some of these promo ones. We'll put them up for like $15 for sale, and so yeah, so people can get them on Bandcamp right now if they're looking for it. One Palm Productions, Bandcamp.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. How important was it for you guys? I mean, outside of, being able to provide distributors with the physical copy, how important was it for you guys to have some physical copy available to people? Because as you mentioned, people our age, people that are into hard rock and metal, they're still all about the vinyl, all about
Mhm.
CDs and whatnot. So again, as you mentioned, there's collectors out there that are looking for this type of stuff still.
Well, as a fellow physical media whore myself, I am always after like preserving kind of our catalog. So I wanted this just to like be a part of my portfolio kind of thing. So for
Right.
me, it's hugely important just to have, because for me, it doesn't really exist unless it's like you can physically hold it in your hand. So streaming is all well and good. And I know a majority of people prefer that because we tend to have a lot of minimalists now because we buy so much stuff. But for me, it's hugely important, just as a fellow physical media guy, just saying, hey, we did stuff and here it is. So I can't answer for Matt, but for me, it was hugely important.
Yeah, I agree with Tanner. I mean, obviously, yeah, I'm a collector myself with vinyl, and I got DVDs and everything. But in terms of just the options, I mean, like you said, I mean, these guys are middle-aged musicians. Most people who are going to be interested in this music are going to be in that age group, and a lot of them still collect and prefer to, have that physical, media copies and play a DVD, and they're not into the streaming, going on their phone and connected it to their TV, so obviously, since we've got our target market here, if you want to call it, since it's in that age group and that's the buying behavior and those are sort of the the viewing behaviors and listening behaviors of those people, we definitely, it was super important that we definitely have physical copies. And what we're going to see how, obviously, this is sold so far really well. And what we might do, this is sort of like a collector's item. I mean, we could press up more of these, but we want to just make it a limited edition thing. And then we're looking into probably sometime over the next year, is doing a more of an extended version of it and having it like on a really done professionally in terms of getting a booklet made, insert and having a lot of bonus footage and so forth. We got a ton of stuff that we can include on it, so we're going to do sort of like a collector's sort of special edition. Once the film's out there, it's streamed for a while, and then maybe sometime around next summer, so we might look into, we're seriously looking into making like a real extended version of the physical copy itself. So, I mean, and obviously this is, like I said, I'm sold out. So it shows that, yes, and we haven't even really gotten a publicist yet for that factor. This is just through social media, you know what I mean? So we're going to do the publicist and everything once it's on streaming. So I think once we get all out there, we can get a good idea of how many people are really interested in buying a physical copy, and, maybe like I said, a digipack sort of, DVD type of thing, if people are still interested, which, I mean, here all the time, right? Musicians are telling us all the time, people still buy CDs even.
Yeah.
So there is still a market out there for people who want this. So yeah, it's very important. Yeah. That we have the physical copy. Yeah.
And we didn't even know how it was going to translate. We could have just sat on the 50 copies. We didn't even know how much interest there would have been for this physical media. I mean, even like digitally wise, when Matt released the second trailer, that caused a huge kind of buzz within the community as well. And then and it's always been these little increments, right? And then like we did the pre-sale like digital streaming thing, and then that went really well. And then now here we are doing the promos of the DVDs, and then like that's doing really well. So I think Matt and I were open to mass distributing this, if people want to have it. And it seems like we're keeping the momentum going in terms of the hype of that this film exists, and we want people to check it out.
It's funny the way that you guys are describing it. It reminds me of way back when I was in college radio, that you would get these white label cassettes or CDs that didn't have the actual album booklet or whatever with them. It was just, something that looked like it was typed up on a typewriter. And you're like, oh, wow, I've got this copy before anyone else and no one can get it and whatnot. So just the way you guys are describing that, it's bringing that vibe back.
Yeah, it was pretty similar, right, to those promo DVDs. I mean, CDs you'd get from the labels, just to get on radio, exactly, college radio and everything. This is just a DVD, version of it, but it's pretty, and exactly that's what it is. It's more of a collector's item, like you said, first pressing, So for people who do enjoy collecting, and if this thing does, really do well, and it's for those people that say, hey, I got one of the first pressings. There's only 50 of these, so again, yeah. just, we all still geek out over that stuff. So there's still plenty of people who
Absolutely.
love that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that kept coming to me as I'm watching the movie, because I know a lot of the bands by name. Obviously I'm not, I mean, obviously I know Fu Manchu, I know all of Eric stuff, I know Nebula, I know a lot of these bands because I have friends that used to run labels and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But there are some bands that I'm not familiar with their work, even though I know their name. So as the movie is going on, I'm thinking we need a soundtrack for this, you know.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and then you start, and I'm thinking, I'm like, well, licensing is going to suck for something like that,
Mhm.
just to get everyone's music on a vinyl, on a CD, whatever. Were there any thoughts to put a playlist on a Bandcamp or even on a Spotify or something like that to help? kind
The there's just one that went up today on Spotify.
There you
It's funny you say that. Yep. And
go.
we did talk about, wanting to possibly do a soundtrack, because the good thing is we did most of the songs you're hearing on there, almost all of them really are the masters are owned by the artists themselves.
Okay.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, of course, I would have loved to have gotten some old Fu Manchu songs on there that Ruben was on, from their early albums, or even Nebula's, or some of Eric's, with Gypsy Hawk that was on Metal Blade and so forth. But obviously, yeah, that'll be a bitch to license, pain in the ass. So most of the songs you're hearing though are either, like I said, Trevor owns all his stuff, so
Mhm.
he's, most of his stuff except for the early Beastmaker stuff. But other than that, he owns all the Horn stuff. Um, all the Freak stuff, Ruben owns. The one Nebula song we did use, he's in the credits, so we can use it. So yeah, that was the one area we had to be really particular. And Tana really did a great job with that. He was, mostly did all that with, in terms of making sure that these guys, we got the sign off that we weren't going to get, hit with any any labels coming at us going, using our stuff. You know what I mean? So if we did do a soundtrack, I don't really, it might not be that difficult, but it's also like we had about 40 songs on, that were in the film.
Yeah.
So it's like, how many are we going to, choose to put on? And again, it's like, the Spotify playlist. Yeah. I mean, we put that on today, just so people could hear the full tracks. And if it's something that people, do, if this thing takes off and people do want something like that, it's something that we could go to one of these, labels, that these guys are on, and maybe just say, hey, what, we're thinking of, doing this. But I'm not so sure how much of that'd be something I guess the label would have to show interest to as well. You know what I mean? Because yeah, for us to print up a bunch of vinyl, it's, yeah, as you know, it ain't cheap, and these
Right.
days it's really just the whole manufacturing thing since COVID has been, even though it's better now, it's still a little off, than what it used to be. So
Yeah.
it's a big undertaking, what I mean? But yeah, we did though just put the Spotify play so everyone can go and put in Lifers the movie playlist on Spotify, and you can go see that. It's up now.
Yeah, and if we were to do a soundtrack for it, we it would be like a box set almost at this
Mm.
point, because there's like 40 to 50 songs on it. So we may have to do like a top 12 of like the movie, like the most important picks of it. If we were to do a single like kind of compilation soundtrack to it. I don't know about like the full movie in terms of all the songs. That would be like a financial headache.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I've run a label before. Tanner's put out his own stuff, so we understand what goes into all that. And it's like it's hard enough as it is what goes on to doing the film, let
Right.
alone now we're going to the music part of it, and yeah, that's a whole nother beast. So that's why if we did do it, we would definitely probably want to have some backing and some help, at least assistance from a label or something, or one of the guys that are in the film or something, because it is a huge undertaking. Yeah, doing that.
Yeah. And the last thing you want is 900 CDs in your closet.
That too. I already got that going on right now. Tanner's already got that with his stuff. So, we already got that with, yeah. So exactly. That's the other thing is space and just, yeah. The last thing I need is more CDs sitting there for 10 years. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because how would we sell them? I mean, besides like the internet or whatever, I would think that the bands would have better luck selling these than kind of we would.
Exactly.
And it would actually help get them more releases, which would be a cool thing too. So, um, yeah, but it was discussed between Matt and I. Like, it would be really cool to do a soundtrack to this, but logistically wise, I don't know how that's possible at this particular moment. Now, if
Right.
it blows up to where, it takes over the world, maybe we can, then that's a different story. But for now, I think just having like a physical pressing of it's going to be on streaming for people. It's out there. So I think that's really the main priority for us at this particular juncture in the process here.
Okay. So what we're doing right now is the closest thing that I've ever gotten to interviewing or shooting an interview with someone. Um, I've actually been kicking an idea around, and this happened last year as I was in the States getting tattooed and speaking to the tattoo artist about the combination or the crossover between music and the tattoo world.
Mm.
And I told the tattoo artist, I said, if I were to corral enough people together to shoot interviews with tattoo artists and talk about crossover with music, would you be interested? And he said, yeah, of course. And I know people that I could help you get in touch with, so on and so forth. So, as being a giant ignoramus when it comes to shooting stuff like what you guys have done, if someone wants to start and do a quality documentary like you guys have done, what are the basic things that they should look for? What's the basic gear they need? Because I'm assuming that having a cell phone and a ring light is not the way to go if you want it to be professional.
I'll take this, Matt, if you don't mind.
Go
So
for it.
basically, this was kind of where I fit in with this whole juncture. Honestly, should I spoil what we used on it? Is that cool, or maybe I'll
Very
do that
much.
right now. So basically, we used a like $600 Canon camera. And we just wanted, we literally used like a $20 lav mic on most of these guys.
Okay.
Um, so we were actually, our motto really is keep it simple, stupid.
Mhm.
So we got a tripod. We got it's a one camera shot. It's basically just learning the basics of even just putting together an interview. So you could actually do it with a cell phone and a ring light, because they do have the technology where you can plug in mics into the
Mhm.
phone and have good audio that way. Now, with documentaries in general, there's all different kinds, all different qualities. Matt and I are big fans of films, especially documentaries, and a lot of them are shot on cell phones sometimes.
Mhm.
Now, I just think having like good equipment would be your best bet. Not having to break the bank to do this. I mean, you can probably do it under $1,000, I would say. Would you agree?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it just yeah. For starters, you could, like you said, you just kind of went through the main things you need. Obviously, there's lighting, but that's not too expensive either. And you don't even need that in all situations either. Um, the probably the biggest challenge is really just the logistics, the traveling,
Mhm.
time and I would say the biggest challenge is really just getting the right people. Like, I'm gonna like if you're gonna do tattoo, I mean, it's kind of a good idea you have, with the tattoo and music. I don't know if you remember back in like 2000 was the whole the tattoo the earth
Right.
thing, right?
Mhm.
Remember that?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that guy, his name Scott, I forget his last name, but I actually interviewed him a few years ago because he put out a book on that. And so just he told me that working with tattoo artists though is very, very interesting. I'll just leave it at that, man. So just to give you a heads up, but no, Tana's right. Yeah, I'd say around 1,000, but it's really the traveling. It's the time, getting them to, getting everyone who's going to be a part of it to, give you the time and to be patient. One of the things we ran into, I would say a little bit, was I think, because we've got the vision, right? They don't know what your vision is, right? Until it's out on the film. And sometimes, and Tana's really good. I think about um, if we got a vision, he's going to get in there and get it, going to get that footage.
Mhm.
And you got to be aggressive doing that. So one thing I've learned too, doing this with him is like, you got to be, if you see something you want, you got to just say, hey, we're going to get this.
Mhm.
I think a couple of the guys maybe were a little put off by that, or a
Okay.
little like, this is annoying, kind of thing, where we're there and maybe they're trying to, set something up or do something, and there we are filming it. It's like I got this camera in my face or right next to me. And if they're stressing or they're focused on something else and here's this camera, it could be, I guess, a little frustrating for them. And we could see through body language and certain things they were kind of annoyed.
Right.
So I think it's I think getting it's not even really the equipment. Like you said, the technology now is so cheap to do something like this. I mean, we've
Mhm.
since we've done this film, we've obviously for our next one, we've got a new editing program. We've got another camera, like a couple of $1,000 camera now,
Mhm.
that we're using on top of the other one. We've got we got now a bunch of different wireless microphones. We did now invest heavily into our second film that we're going to be doing. But yeah, I wouldn't even say it's the equipment. And that's the funny thing is that's why I think a lot of them just saw us with this equipment going, what are these guys doing? And when they saw the trailer, they were
Mhm.
like, oh, whoa, this looks pretty professional. That's like, yeah, you don't need a whole, set of people. I mean, back in, the early 2000s, if you could put together a documentary, right, you needed a whole, crew of people.
Right.
You just need one or two people now to really get it all done because the technology is so good. I think the challenge is really the logistics with the traveling, getting people to sit down for the interview and do a couple of interviews with you or show
Mhm.
up. Tanner was great about with the Freaks. He would go to their rehearsal. He went saw them live a few times and shot them. So it's really that's I think the biggest challenge is getting enough material while these guys aren't pissed off and frustrated with you being around where they want nothing to do with you after that. So,
Right.
that I would say is the challenge, right? I mean, what would you say to that, Tanner?
Well, that and, editing wise, I mean, we used, I think, iMovie on this. It's a free program that comes with like a Mac. So if you have a MacBook, obviously you could do something like this. But
Mhm.
yeah, I agree with Matt in terms of, you can't build a sandcastle if you don't have the sand to do it. So like we needed to go out there and get that sand so we can build the coolest castle in all of the land. So I think and I think it's also just starting with the basics, like being able just to take it one step at a time. Because a
Yeah.
lot of this is very intimidating,
Mhm.
maybe to some people, but to us, it's just really fun because we took it one step at a time. Yeah, we stumbled and we got back on the horse, and we stumbled, we got back on the horse. So I think it's also the determination to like never just quit, kind of thing, like
Mhm.
through the process. Because a lot Matt mentioned it earlier in this interview, where it's like, how many times do you see a trailer and then the film never comes out?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
Matt and I have had like hour-long conversations of all the coolest films that we saw trailers for that don't even exist.
Right.
So I think it's just not being able to not be intimidated through the doing the process, learning as you go, not being afraid to ask questions, just really not being afraid to like put yourself out there and just see what happens. And I think that's what kind of tends to hinder a lot of cool movies from being like even filmed. It's just like the whole headache of having to the logistics and just going through the process.
Yeah, and one last thing is also the time you get it out. And so when we started filming this, we started in November of 2023. And so my goal was because there's been times I remember back, when I was living in New York, there was in the late 90s, there was this New York hardcore documentary that came out. And I remember I was so excited for it because I was at one of the shows that was being filmed. And the thing didn't come out for 4 years. And by the time that thing, because there was so much stuff that hoops I had to jump through. This was obviously in the 90s, so it was a lot more difficult to put out a documentary then. But it took 4 years. And by the time that thing came out, some of those bands were already done, broken up,
Right.
and so much had changed. So it wasn't really representing what was really going on at the time. It was
Mhm.
old. And so that was the thing we had was the goal was to get it out. Originally was to get it out anywhere between 15 to 18 months. And we did do that. I didn't want to be in more, we started, like I said, filming in November 2023. So the goal was really to get it out around either February or March. And then it came out in April, but it still fit within that year and a half. And
Right.
so you just don't want it to be too long because as we saw, Kip want to, leave. And so all these things could change in that time, especially as they're older. So that was the thing too, is you definitely want to, our goal in this film was we didn't want to wait 2 years. We wanted to get it out in a year and a half. That was the goal. And we did that. And, because like Tanner has a good thing. He says, with art is, you never, it never gets done. It gets abandoned. It never gets finished. So you have to just know when you go, okay, you know what, we're good. Because we could have sat there for another 6 months and tried to get more footage, tried to edit out, maybe cut it short and do all that. I think you just got to know when you have enough and you go, okay, this is good. Let's just put it out now and let's not sit on this thing for 2+ years and then, no one cares about it anymore. Or no one, everything changes and it's not representing really what's going on anymore,
Right.
Yeah, especially when you're doing a contemporary film. We're not doing like a history lesson in terms of like
Yeah,
talking
exactly.
about a specific era of music. We're doing it in the now, as Tesla says. So,
Mhm.
Yeah, you don't want to Chinese democracy it where it,
Exactly. Yeah.
all those years later and it's
Mhm.
missed the initial wave there. Yeah, my gear question through my frustrations as a podcaster, I think I've started out small and built on things, but even with that, I have the same mic that Matt has. Uh,
Mhm.
for example, you see shows that are rated high or they're getting all this, listenership or whatnot, and you're thinking, man, these fuckers don't even level their damn audio between them and their guests and
Mhm.
music that comes in. Is it really worth my time to sit there and edit
Mhm.
everything the way that I do? And it just comes to the point where it's like, fuck, people have come to expect a certain quality from me. I can't just half-ass it now just because someone else is getting more listens and
Yeah.
they're doing whatever. So that's
Mhm.
kind of where I was trying to head with that question as well. It's something that really interests me, and it's something that I really need to contemplate because I think it's a cool idea, but at the same time, I don't just want to half-ass it. I don't,
Mhm.
and especially seeing what you guys have done, um, it really helps set like a standard. And
Mhm.
it's cool to talk about all this stuff with you guys to see what went on behind this. And it isn't, yeah, you can't just shove a camera phone in somebody's face and expect them to go, "Hey, I'll open up for you and talk all about
Mhm.
this stuff." There's a process and there's, rapport that you have to build with them and so that they open
Totally.
up and they do this stuff. So it doesn't differ that much from what we do in podcasts, but you need to know how to approach it. It's its own kind of animal and just know what you need to do without obviously pissing people off.
Well, yeah, and you also can't make excuses for not following through. I think that's the what I
Mm.
was trying to even say from the get go is like a lot of people just use excuses, like you mentioning, like not going over and just shoving a camera in people's faces and hoping for something. I kind of. I mean, obviously, not physically shoving it in people's faces here, but you do have to go out there with the camera and just like see what happens.
Mhm.
The worst
Mhm.
somebody's gonna say is no. That's what
Right,
Matt and I have found tremendously is like,
Yeah.
yeah, the worst they
right.
could do is say no. And then we just keep moving forward. You just keep moving forward until you find those gems and then a film pops out. So I
Yeah,
don't know. I just think not having just don't let excuses hold you back.
Yeah.
yeah.
And you were saying about Bob before, Victor, one of the other thing that I did learn, through this, and it's something that Bob, Nalbandian had done with his documentaries, um, like you said, is that rapport, obviously, the good thing about, both Tanner and I doing podcasts ourselves was we got to kind of vet a lot of these. Yeah, like I said, everybody we had in the film, we had interviewed before.
Mhm.
Either one of us or both of us had interviewed. And the one thing I noticed is that, if you notice Bob's films, he normally had, and even his podcast, he kind of had his sort of, I don't want to say his boys, but he had
Yeah.
his network of people. And I used to sit there and sometimes think like, he just kind of sticks in a lot of times to that. Why doesn't he branch out more? Well, now I understand it,
Mhm.
because when you're going to put time and money and resources and all this stuff into something like this, and you're going to dedicate yourself to it, you definitely want to make sure the people that you're going to have in it are going to do the same,
Mhm.
and like we said, that was a good thing about, for instance, like we said, Eric, because we had known him for years. Tanner's played shows with him with his band. Obviously I've hung out with them. We both hung out with him before. We've interviewed him. We've had extensive history with him in terms of that. So because of that, he already knew us, trusted us, and it was so easy to get stuff. Like I said, he was giving us more than we would have been asking for because of that.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. And I learned, with Bob was he had his network of people that he had featured a lot in his stuff. And I understand why. Is because if you're gonna, if you're gonna dedicate this time, money, and everything into it, the last thing you need is to have someone in it who's not going to really reciprocate that and respect that. And we were lucky enough that for the most part everybody did do that. But I'll be honest with you, like with I had to kind of put out the first trailer a lot earlier than I wanted to, because I kind of had to light a fire under some of the guys, because I think because they didn't know what it was going to be and they just saw us come and do an interview and blah blah blah. I understood, like, okay, I think they're hesitant to give us this stuff because they don't know what it's going to be. So let me put out a trailer to show them, look, this is the real deal. It's really professional. And once we did get that first trailer out last summer, it did light a little fire in them to go, oh, okay, this looks cool. All right, let me get them this stuff, quicker than they were, kind of doing it. So that's the thing too, is really, if you don't already have that rapport, then you have to do something like that to maybe kind of give them a push, or a nudge. So that's one thing I definitely learned, and probably going forward is really, making sure that rapport and that you already have that commitment from these people, beforehand, so that you're not wasting your time going, oh man, this person doesn't want to do this or give me this and is making it difficult. Cause that would be frustrating if you had to deal with that,
Yeah, definitely establish the groundwork first before you even invest your time to want to complete this. So, yeah.
There are two lifers that didn't appear all that much in the film, and those are you guys, because you guys have, through music, through being in the industry, through different facets, podcasting, so on and so forth. I'd consider you guys lifers as well. There are a few scenes where you guys appear. There's a scene where Bob appears as well. Was that a conscious effort that you guys didn't want to be that, talking box in front of everyone?
Well,
Yeah.
the film isn't about us. The film is about the five individuals in the film, and I think Matt did a great job because he edited the full thing. And for me, I thought he did a great job of just like the focus was on the musicians themselves. Our job was just to capture it.
Mm.
Yeah, like we didn't obviously I'm a huge fan of those Sam Dunn movies, his
Right.
films. And I liked what he did, having him in it and doing his journey, his adventure. I think that's really cool. But yeah, we definitely didn't want to, have us, or be a focus. I mean, even the times you see us in there, the only reason why we're in there is because someone said something that was like, okay, this fits in what we want to put in there. It wasn't like, oh, let's get our faces in there. You know what I mean? Not at all. I mean, it was up to me. I wouldn't have had myself in there once. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, yeah, I do, I guess, consider ourselves lifers too. Yeah, I mean, we're not really getting much at it. I mean, instead of just for the love of the art itself and just, the love of music and putting this out, obviously we're not going to, we're not planning on, we're expecting to make any money off this at all. We would love to just break even, on just the cost it took to travel and all the lodging and all that stuff would be great. But yeah, it's just obviously we've been doing a podcast and everything. We're like, we just, and Tanner, like said, he had done a couple of films. It was like, let's step it up. Let's take step it up a notch and do something different. And like I said, even though, and the next film we're doing is going to be even more challenging because it's not going to be in California. It's going to be in a different state. It's going to be, it's going to take more planning logistically and so forth. And like I said, we've had to invest our own money into getting new equipment and everything so we can make it even better than we did with this one. So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of like putting us, in the film, it wasn't a conscious decision. It was definitely conscious to not have us in there, and let alone not to put us in there at all. You know what I mean? So,
I think
and
it was
who
just
knows?
happenstance,
It was,
right?
yeah, it was just, yeah.
Because, with the Formula 400 practice, like that room was really cramped and there's like 8 people in it. So we could not like film a rehearsal and then like have one of us not be in it just because of like where we had to position ourselves to film to get the footage. So yeah, I think it was just happenstance.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the timetable for the second film? When do you guys start working on that?
So we've got two. It's going to be a little different. It's going to be at least for a couple of them. It's going to be a little more. So this obviously the first life issue is really a bit, you know, really focused on five individuals, their history, and what they're doing today, right?
Mhm.
Now this is going to be kind of like that, but the people we're focused on the next one. We've got two artists slash bands locked down that have already agreed to do it, and we're going to be discussing with them this summer more in terms of logistically and how we're going to approach it. But um, it's going to be a little different. Where these are bands that are it's not so much about their history as it is they're bands that are trying to make a living in a way doing this now.
Okay.
Where the last one, the only one that we had in this in the first Lifers here is Trevor. He's the only one who's doing it full time, and making a career out of it.
Mhm.
This next one are for guys who are very active, um, in this, with putting out records. They're a little bit younger, not super much, younger, but some of the guys in it are a little bit younger, still middle aged, but not maybe in their, mid to late 50s and early 60s. But they're actually active. They're touring more. They're especially mostly in Europe.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's going to be different in that regard, where it's more focused on the band and how they're trying and the challenges they're facing, trying to make it as a full-time thing. At least a couple of them were doing with that. And so the timeline really, we're doing, the writing it right now. We're in pre-production. We've got a couple, like I said, on board. There's a couple others. We're only going to focus on 4 this time and not 5. And we're in the pre-production, the writing phase right now, and the filming, the first filming with B-roll footage and so forth is going to start in September.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're hoping to get that one. We're hoping to get out probably by, I would say, the new year of 2027. Just a tentative off the top of my head right now. About a 2.5 years from now, that one we're hoping to be out by then. But we're getting on it though. We don't want it to be like, let's wait another 2 years and then start putting it out. We want to make this a succession, and we're hoping to even do we're just taking one at a time here, but we want this to be a series, because we've gotten a lot of good feedback from people that like the concept of this. They like the idea of talking about not just historical stuff, but really showcasing now in the moment what everyone's going through to try to make this a full-time thing, or to just try to survive within it. And so it's gonna be a little bit different, but and a different place obviously too. It won't be in California. We can tell you where it's going to be. It's going to be out of Texas. So it's going to be
Okay.
Texas. Yeah. That much we could say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and definitely this film will help that film being able to be like, hey, here we have something like, would you want to, would you be willing to work with us? These are the kind of things we need. So this should kind of help
We have a
like,
reference now. Yeah.
streamline that whole
Mhm.
process. And
Yeah.
so we'll have a lot more fun doing it, and the musicians themselves will kind of know our background and our history. So it should help all of us out. Just even like what Matt said earlier of us having lifers, and then subsequently the is it a sequel or is it, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's a second. It'll be a Lifers too. So yeah. Hmm.
Cool. And it still falls within that 15 to 18 months that you said with the other one. So that makes
Yep.
sense.
Same thing, exactly. We don't we like I said, we have a tentative plan, but yes, we got to the time to get it out is definitely crucial. And what's good is going into this one we had that time frame, but we were also like, well, can we get it done by that time? You don't know. It was the first time doing it. Now we kind of see what needs to be. It'll take quicker now because we already had this experience doing it this time. Now we know, okay, how we're going to do it, how to work it. This one was a little different where I waited to get all the pieces to the puzzle first before putting it together with the editing. The next one, we can kind of do that as we go, because now we've kind of hammered all that out and figured out all the, the quirks and everything, and all the hammering out all the kinks from the last one. So we have a much clearer, focus and idea of what we're going to do this time than we did with Lifers, the first one. Yeah.
And where did you say people can check the movie out currently?
So we have right now, it's available on our Bandcamp page. So you can go to One Palm, that's PALM, One Palm Productions.bandcamp.com. It's up there. Like I said, these are going pretty. We're selling them out pretty quick. We don't have too many left, but there are some still. So if they want to go there and pick one up, they can go ahead and do that. Like I said, it's been licensed by filmzy.com. So it takes, what is it? I think they said it takes from 2 to 12 weeks. That was a couple of weeks ago that it was licensed. So we're hoping sooner than later. We're hoping it's not going to take another 10 weeks, obviously. By the summer, we're hoping sometime between now, by the end of the summer, that's going to be available for everyone, and as well as some of the other sites like the Prime Video and so forth. But it's finally going to be out there though. It's just a waiting game right now with the streaming, and we're really excited for that, obviously, because that's where obviously most people want to see it, and once they do, hopefully everyone will enjoy it, and yeah, so sometime this summer. And if everyone could go to our social media pages, we got on Instagram and Facebook, Lifers the Movie. It's on, and we're updating stuff daily. We're posting daily just to keep people updated on what's going on. So, and like we were just talking about, there's a Spotify playlist. So for people that either have seen the movie or they want to get an idea what the band sound like and their music, you can go to the Spotify playlist. Same thing, Lifers the Movie playlist on Spotify.
Okay. And your podcasts?
So it's interesting right now. So Aftershocks that I've been doing, on and off with by myself, with Chris Aiken and so forth. Right now that's kind of on the back burner. Just because we've got this going on, we got a second one coming. But I am doing, because we're doing the heavy rock stuff, there is I did do a podcast called The Heavy Galaxy Show with John Gist, who is a big, fixture in the scene. He's a promoter and does a couple of shows as well, podcasts in the scene, the Doom and Stone Show. We're restarting that. We're actually doing our first one tomorrow.
Okay.
So this is today's the 18th. So that's tomorrow's the 19th. We're going to start doing that. It should be out the following week. So we're starting that one up again. With the podcast, I know Tanner, I think he's restarted his Poppitt's Corner. I believe you could talk about that, right?
Off and on, but no, I'm primarily focused on kind of what we're doing, and I have other films in the works. So, yeah.
Okay.
Not to get on a tangent there.
And similar deal. Anywhere people can go to keep up with the shows when they're back up and going.
Yeah, primarily YouTube and Rumble is where I'm at. So it's Poppitt's Corner is the name of the podcast that I'm on. It's Poppitts Corner is the name of the podcast. And with Matt, we try to do a couple here and there, whatever. We just like to have fun doing it. And I'm a huge fan of Aftershocks. I learned a lot from Matt in particular when it comes to that whole aspect. So it's as far as that's concerned, that's where you can find Poppitt's Corner. So
yeah, for Heavy Galaxy, it's actually heavygalaxy.com. It's through the site. I have a site up there. I haven't, I've been working on this for a while. I'm going to try to get this really honed this summer. I've got a radio station blog thing called seismicsounds.com. It's seismic-sounds.com. It's got all heavy rock, classic metal, radio. We're going to be, putting up some podcasts and shows on that radio station. But it's also the home for heavygalaxy.com as well. So everyone can check out the podcasts on there. And like keep up with lifers as well on there and everything. So seismic-sounds.com. Everyone should check it out. Like I said, that's another focus I have with getting that really to where I want to get it. I've been wanting to for the last couple of years. It's been up for a little while, but I haven't really pushed it too hard. So that's another little project we're doing, right? That we're always doing is just these little extra things. So yeah, seismic-sounds.com.
Yeah, I have to say that listening to Aftershocks, I fight back from writing you guys continuously because I know I'm going to be a pain in the ass, but listening to you guys on certain conversations and I'm sitting there screaming at the radio, agreeing with things. And I couldn't help it. The other day, I don't know if you saw, but there's a new Scars on Broadway track released. Did you know that the legendary Casey Chaos came up with that name?
I didn't know that, but I do know that him and Darian Malakian were tight because he was on Malakian's label, Each of Music. Amen was.
Yeah,
But I didn't know he came up with that name. No. Yeah, I know. We towards the aftershocks. I think that's one of the things too. It's very it's one of those contentious shows where we just kind of shoot off at the hip. Me and Chris,
right.
with our opinions, is very strong opinionated. I think one of the things is. And I'm sure we talked about that with System of a Down. Obviously, that was one of the ones I know last ones we had done, and of course the one about AMN with Casey Chaos. We've got. I think the one we really got a lot of pushback on, or a lot of people not happy with what we did, was the one with Bobby Liebling. We had a lot of people who agree with us.
Okay.
Bobby Liebling from Pentagram.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we had a lot of hate on that one. Obviously, we're not big fans of certain things, but that's the thing is, I mean, Aftershocks is just one of those things shooting at the hip. But I think it's fun doing that. But at the same time, I've been doing that. We've been doing that for a long time with Aftershocks. I think what I want to kind of do now with the podcast or with the films, or whatever, is really more of a celebratory. I mean, a lot of times we can get pretty negative on the Aftershocks. So I wanted to really focus on kind of more of the celebratory, upbeat content, instead of just everything that we don't like about what's going on. It's more like, let's focus on the stuff we do like, and stuff that's been historically good. Focus on some classic records and stuff, instead of just beat a couple of pain in the ass assholes just shooting off the hip and with our opinions on stuff. So it's fun, and I'm sure one day I'll probably go back to doing that once we see what's going on with the industry in the next year or two. But I didn't know that though. I didn't know that Casey Chaos came up with that. I mean, what do you agree? Do you think legend or no, or not?
I don't remember if I read it or heard him say it in an interview, but that he had started the band with
with Darren.
Yeah, and that he was kind of pissed that he had kind of taken the name and ran with it.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I understood from that. But I mean, he's still releasing music under that name, so who knows what the truth probably is behind that, and probably only the two of them know, and probably they're probably the only two that probably care to know either. I don't see too many people out there on the internet shaking their fists saying we need to get down to the bottom of this.
No, I mean, there's not that many people that are listening to that anyway. I mean, not to be, again, I don't want to be negative here, but yeah, the whole System of a Down thing is just, as a guy who's a huge fan of them, it's just really disappointing. Like we see with a lot of these bands that they just refuse to be able to get along so they can put out new music. I mean, I can't see them anymore. I can't watch them play the same songs for the last 20, since, I mean, they haven't put out a record in 20 years. So it's that's just a little pet peeve of mine, or bands that just really ride on the nostalgia and they don't want to put nothing else out. So my opinion, I just stopped supporting them then. That's just.
Yeah, I don't get that either. I remember one of the first times they got back together again. Actually, the owner of the tattoo parlor that I go to, we kind of got into an argument. I'm like, why are you going to see them? They're just going to play the same shit they've always played. Like, seriously, now you're going to pay like $120 to see them to play the same old, same old. I'm like, all right,
exactly.
If they're playing like 5 or 6 new songs, all right, I get that.
Yeah.
But and I mean, that's a thing that I try to do here on the podcast, is that we do a monthly like recap of albums that have come out and stuff that kind of stick out to us. Cause I mean, I think that this music needs to keep going,
sure.
And if we're just set on what came out in '89, what do you expect once all those bands are dead and gone, and some of them
exactly
are terrible at this point?
Yep.
There's other shit out there that's good, and none of it, again, I keep telling people, nothing is going to replace your favorites. Still doesn't mean that you can't add to that giant playlist that you got and get enjoyment out of new stuff that's coming out.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got to be replenished. You can't live off the same thing year after year after year, and that's one of the reasons we focused on these bands too, is because there is new music and they're active, with these new bands, and so we want people to know that there is still good new music being put out there. Yes, it's not played everywhere like it used to be. You got to dig a little bit. But normally when I play these bands for some people who were into a lot of the stuff of the 90s and so forth, they're like, oh, this stuff's great. Like I got a good buddy of mine. We're going to see Fu Manchu tonight, actually, here in San Francisco. And a lot of these bands that were in the film, he didn't know about. And I got him, hooked on all these bands. It's just a lot of them don't know it's there.
Right.
A lot of people just don't know it's there. And so that's the one thing we want to do too with our films, or just everything in general. Like you said, the podcast is just let people know you don't have to just keep regurgitating and listening to the same stuff you've been doing for the last 30 years. There's still tons of really good music out there. It's just you have to dig a little, or just open your mind a little and search a little bit, and you'll find it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. So, yeah, thanks again for having us on and helping us promote this, man. It means so much. It's great to meet you finally. I've heard a lot about you, and just, thanks for all that you do too, man. Another lifer.
Exactly.
Right? So.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I hope that, that this helps drive some more people in your direction. And
thanks, man.
I definitely want to, as the series continues to grow and whatnot, I hope that, you guys come back and continue to tell me and the listeners of this show, what else you guys have cooking and what's coming up next. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No. Yeah. Thanks so much, Victor. Really appreciate it, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you, man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And on that note, we will be ending the show now. Thanks again for watching this or listening to the audio version. And we will see you next time right here on Signals from Mars. See you, folks.
Thank you for watching the Signals from Mars live stream. You can watch the show live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, or check out replays on YouTube. Go to signalsfrommars.com for more information. This concludes our show.